Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Finance for Monday, August 15th, 2022 to order. I guess before I get into the agenda, just wanted to note that we have switched over to Zoom this evening for our meeting due to some infrastructure issues in the community center room that we meet in. And rather than try to sweat it out possibly in August in that room, we have decided to move everything virtually to Zoom. So hopefully no one went to the community center to attend. With that being said, item number 1 on the agenda is public forum. Anybody wishing to address the Board of Finance in public forum? I do not believe I see anybody. So therefore we'll move on to item number 2. Approve minutes of the regular meeting of July 18th, 2022. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Moved.
Second.
Any corrections or comments? I did have one, and I believe it is almost all the way at the bottom of the meeting minutes. I just got to find it. There were a few questions, by the way, that were asked and I believe answered by everyone, except for Mr. I think Assistant Chief Shove had was supposed to get back to us about the 10,000 overage in utilities. I did not see anything coming through. So Mary Jane, just a note, if you could.
I will follow up on that.
Excellent, thank you. Other than that, the only comment I had was on page number 8. I think it's pretty much in the middle of the page. Actually, it says right before the motion, Mr. Antonazzi recused himself from voting on expenditures. As much as at one point I would have liked to have been Mr. Antonazzi, that would be Mr. Ailes. Recused himself from voting on expenditures related to Antonazzi Associates. Anybody else have any corrections or revisions? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? Okay. Item number 3, correspondence. Standing Building Committee minutes. I just looked up and all of a sudden I see David DeMeo's face on the screen. Hello, David.
Good evening.
So anything on standing building, I went through all of them and you guys have had some very, had some long meetings, had a lot going on this summer.
We do. Busy time.
Yes, it always is. I don't know if there's anything the board wanted to ask questions of or anything you wanted to bring to our attention, but I did not have anything outstanding on my end.
Happy to address any questions first, and then I can think of only one item I'll bring you up to speed on.
Sure, David, why don't you do that while we look at our notes? So
this goes back to the issues at Baldwin Middle School with the HVAC issues. So we were kind of at a stalemate with Save More and Silver Petroselli. We did get BL Company to give us a very reasonable price to come in as a third-party review. That's currently underway. We also did our own cammering of the ductwork lines to make sure there weren't any obstructions in the ductwork. The complaint is there isn't enough airflow in units 5 and 6 that service part of the school. So we've kind of checked the boxes on anything that could be happening with the existing ductwork system. So that's all clear and in good shape. And now we're just waiting for BL Company to finish their review. And so then we can go back to Silver Petroselli and Save More and get this item resolved. It's been going on for well over a year. So a little frustrating, but we've kind of taken that approach right now.
Right. Okay. Let me ask you a question that actually is quite pertinent that I didn't think about when I was reading these at the time, but kind of reared its head this evening, which is regarding the HVAC at the community center. I do know there's a project at the community center for the elevator and I believe the fire alarm, but I don't believe there's any HVAC part of that because it's all the controls for the elevator and the fire alarm. Any issues with the HVAC? Is that just a blip, anomaly, or actually you probably wouldn't know too much from the scope of the project, and maybe that's more of a question for Matt, maybe, I don't know.
We're not aware of any issues with the overall HVAC system at the community center. It hasn't brought to our attention, but with the elevator and fire alarm project, there was an HVAC component specific to the elevator project.
Oh, okay, just the elevator.
Okay. We did send the folks in the community center back to, we felt it was a large enough and more complex project that they really should exercise and hire a design team rather than do it as a design build basis. It was getting very complex with controls, HVAC components, and whether the elevator components that went along with the project. We felt uncomfortable advising them to go out on it and hire the contractors that they normally use for service to just do this project.
Mr. Chairman, if I could for a moment.
Yeah, sure.
There are also some discussions going on at the community center between Rick and Todd Rake, who is basically runs the facility, about incorporating heat pumps. I don't know if they've talked to you about that at all at this point, but there is some discussions about this comprehensive need to look at HVAC in a more comprehensive manner, because it includes elevators as well as the typical building systems. And in the spirit of green living and green life, there are some discussions starting to formulate and take place around some heat pump technology. I don't know if you've heard anything on that, Dave, or anybody's reached out to you.
Yes, Matt, thank you for bringing that up. Part of the, I think that's what kind of sent us, sent the committee back to them and suggested that they get a designer on board, because there was discussion about geothermal, incorporating geothermal into the community center. And it started off, let's do a geothermal system for the elevators project. And the elevator project isn't big enough to warrant a geothermal system. However, it's great technology, so you might as well go back and get some advice from the design team on whether you upgrade the entire community center utilizing a geothermal system. So that discussion did come to us, but it was very convoluted the way it was coming. We felt we needed to advise them to get design.
Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
My only other comment is under new business. It was just something I observed about the project commissioning. David, I don't probably have to tell you, but I like the fact that is something that the town is looking at including in the projects. I over the years, I've realized that commissioning, especially for the HVAC systems and looking at the building in totality at the end, making sure everything's balanced out and everything's working properly. It's not that it hasn't been going on, but there's more of a checks and balances on that. And I was pleased to see that is something the building committee is taking in very seriously.
Yeah, we're keeping that on our radar screen and trying to come up with some baseline parameters on when and when not to put that into the bid docs.
Great. Does anybody else have anything for Mr. DeMayo? Chairman DeMayo.
Just one quick question, if I could.
Sure, Jeff.
So, any update on the dispute between the engineer and the installer up at the Baldwin project? I know that there was a third party that was going to be taking a look at it, and I was just wondering if they'd inspected yet, or if there'd been any progress.
Sure. I think I opened the discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We've hired BL Company as a third party reviewer, and they may be in there right now. They were scheduled to get in toward the end of August and actually start their on-site assessment of the entire systems and the issues we're having with airflow. And we've also on our own Blackstone hired Steamatic, and they came in and did a cammering of all the existing ductwork just to check the box and make sure there weren't any obstructions in the existing ductwork that were out of contract. There was never a contract to replace ductwork. It was always equipment to make sure that there wasn't a fire damper that had failed and let go, or some other type of debris that may have been in the existing ductwork restricting airflow on units 5 and 6. So that box has been checked, and we have a report that everything's clean. So I would think in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we should have a report from Bail Company that we will then share with both Save More and Silver Petrocelli, so we can get to some resolution with this problem.
Great. Thanks so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, Jeff. Yeah, we're all anxious to get this behind us.
Right. All right. Is there anything else? And if not, David, thank you very much for joining.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure to spend a
Thanks.
few minutes with you folks.
Okay.
Good night, Dave. Thank
See
you.
you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Item number 2 under correspondence, pension committee minutes and monthly report. Anything under the minutes or the report? I guess, Matt, I don't know if there's any, Matt or Mary Jane, I don't know if there's any update on the review of the COLA for the across the board, not just for police, but I know that that's being looked at on a more global sense at this point.
Yeah, Mike, you're absolutely right. The last Board of Selectmen meeting where we actually addressed this, there were more questions than there were answers. Mitch was tasked with putting together a raft of information relative to the retiree pool, who, when they were retired, what rates they're at, and so forth. Because there is there's considerable concern about equity and who gets treated and who doesn't get treated, whose salaries were when they retired were probably more I don't want to say in need of some kind of adjustment, as opposed to the salaries of those who have retired in the last 10 to 15 years. We still struggled with the conversation around whether or not it should be just the police department or everybody. And I think there was, and Mary Jane, you can probably comment on this. I think there was, the sentiment was largely on the side of, if we're going to do something for police, we probably have a moral obligation to do something for the balance of our retirees. As you may recall, the police department is not entitled to a cost of living adjustment, but what they are entitled to, based on a contract that was negotiated many years ago by those same members who gave up the pension for the generations to follow, was a line that said the town would review cost of living adjustments. That's why that is the only contract that has that requirement, that the Board of Selectmen look every 2 years for cost of living adjustment. So MJ, if I'm mischaracterizing the sentiment in the room, please let me know, because I think folks felt that this was really a question of equity.
I don't have anything to add. Matt summed it up well.
Okay. And obviously in the pension report itself, we're lower, but that's to be expected with everything going on. So
am I.
we all are, right?
Yeah.
And we will reiterate, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So okay, anything else on pension? Otherwise we'll move over to OPEB.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh yeah, Bob, go ahead.
I'll just mention, it's just because it's a bit of a milestone that Mitch mentioned, that we've just crossed into having more people on contributory pension rather than defined benefit in the police department. So it's I'm not saying we're seeing the beginning of the end, because this could go on for generations, but there's fewer people in defined benefit now than ever before.
The needle is moving.
It is.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Bob. Anything on OPEB? Pretty much the same thing on the reports. A little bit of a downturn, but if nothing else, we can move on. Item number 4, review and accept the report of expenditures to the Board of Education. We have 2 fiscal years to look at this evening. So to report, we have obviously Linda Trudeau, we have Jennifer Baldwin. Good evening, Jennifer, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. It's my first time. So.
Well,
we'll be nice.
Well, we will be very nice to you then.
Sure. So again, we have the 2 budgets. So ending out the 21-22 school year, the expenditures for the month of July for that year were $753,997.28. Expenditures and encumbrances through the end of July were 99.99% of the budget. There was, at the time of the last meeting, there was we ended the year with a surplus of about $8,900, or I think it's $8,987. So we did really well. I think that a lot of that is probably turning over to Cliff and the building committees because there was a number of things that came up. Transfer, let's see, the warrant submitted for the month of July of 2022 was $924,018.42. Just a couple of things to highlight. Salary numbers were high, but overall we're under budget. Teacher negotiations are going to begin, as well as administration negotiations. The cost for substitutes was higher than expected. Transportation was higher than expected because part of that was that extended school year added an extra week, and that was not budgeted for. The extra week is budgeted for next year. And transportation, we had received the excess cost from the state, which was much higher than anticipated and much higher than what has historically been provided. That was applied all to tuition. So there is an increase in transportation based on needs and locations for students needing that. And I think that was pretty much it for that year. Any questions? Unless I missed something, Linda, feel free.
Well, yeah, I did have actually 2 other adjustments. There was a credit from C-Power that came in right at the end of June that I did not originally catch. So with the 2 adjustments, we actually have a surplus now of $17,657. So it's a little bit higher than what we had originally thought, not by much.
Okay. Questions for Jennifer or Linda? I'm scanning mine. The transfers that you were talking about, those have not happened yet, or they have happened? They have not happened, right?
They had not happened at the
Right.
time that this report was prepared, because the board approved them at their last meeting last week. So these reports were done before the transfers were made.
Got it.
Were approved.
Got it. In fact, I was just noticing I was looking at the wrong column. For some reason, I went to the end. I should know better. But I was looking and saying, oh, well, the percentages are actually not that far off in all the categories, but that was after transfers the last 2 years.
Right. So
I could see where, the tuition is 76% expended. So, yeah, so those transfers happen or have happened, but not for this report.
Right.
Right. That's what you said. Okay. Good.
Can you speak to the food services, how we ended the year? I read in the minutes, it's actually, I guess, better than expected, but can you speak to that? Jen?
Yeah, Veronica, thanks for bringing that up. That was one of my comments actually, is that they are trending better. I was wondering
Yeah.
how they finished the end of the year, because it said June was really good, but how did they trend for the end? How did they turn out for the end of the year? It's a good question.
Oh, that was at the last meeting for sure. Yeah, they did really well. And I know that they transferred money to the Board of Ed pursuant to that. I'm going to let Linda talk about, because I think what you're looking for is what like the final numbers were, or more like the percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
just in an estimated sense.
all right. So they ended the year at the time of the last report, $595,000 surplus, which is not going to, there's going to be a couple adjustments to that. There were some software, some hardware equipment purchases. So I have to make sure that everything has been recorded for the end of the year. By law, they can't have more than a couple months of operating expenses on their books. So we're reviewing the final numbers now that we've got all the adjustments in. I actually started it today, but I have not finished it. But they ended the year really well. And right now we're told that we are getting just over $400,000 for next year to provide free meals for as long as that lasts. And if the participation rate stays the way it was at the end of the year, then that should take us through about December. So parents will get all kinds of communication saying that they'll be able to have free meals till approximately December, and then they'll have to go back to the paid, free or reduced, whatever they qualify for.
The rate of participation, is that like 50%? Is that, do you have any idea what the rate of participation is?
I don't have what the final was. I don't have it with me. I do have that information.
Okay.
I can send it out tomorrow. We're not sure. The start of the year is always different for participation. We've said it's the start of school, parents are making lunches, they're providing meals. So participation.
By June, they're done.
By October or November, they're done. So it does vary. So we really don't know how long it's going to last and what the participation rate is going to be.
Thank you.
Sure.
Linda, the 400,000 that you mentioned, is that coming from the state or the federal government? Or is it a mix?
It's a federal pass through to the state.
Okay.
And there was talk of possible other federal funding, or state funding coming through. Other states have done that. They've come up with money to try and stretch it out for the full year. Connecticut has not come up with anything definite yet. There was some talk about it. We have not received any further communication on whether or not that will happen.
Great, thank you.
Linda, can I ask you, I found the reports from the July meeting. I always forget what ADP stands for, average daily
participation.
Okay. I saw that I did pull up that report from July. Looked like the enrollment was 3,227 with all the schools, and the average daily participation amongst the schools was 1,906. For lunch.
Yeah, over 50%.
Yeah, that was for lunch. Breakfast was a little bit lower at 1,106.
Thank you.
Sure.
I had one question on the warrant for 21-22. Second page. There was a line there for 3,500. Second line down.
Yep.
Hotel for kids, and it said portrait of a grad for $3,500. So I'm sure there's something to that. So
there is a lot to it, and that was actually my first question when I read the warrants. There was a project, and Dr. Freeman is going to roll this out at the September meeting. They redid the portrait of a graduate. There was a big community push with this. I want to say he had 40 community members as well as staff all across the different schools. Really, I believe it's going to take the place or replace the mission and vision, and Portrait of a Grad is going to take that place, but there's a whole presentation prepared for September.
Okay, great. So we'll learn more about it then.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
I had a question on page 6. Down towards the bottom, there were 2 items to the University of Pittsburgh for Lakes Techs and District Techs. And I just wasn't a big amount, either one of them, but I was just curious as to what that was for.
I'll have to give that one to Linda.
Sure.
So University of Pittsburgh is, what's the other name? It's the IFL. Now I can't remember what it stands for. But they provide a lot of professional development for us. So I don't remember exactly what those books were. I can look it up and get back to you. But they do a lot of professional development kind of resources.
Yeah, historically they've been providing that for as long as I can remember. So
Thanks. I think I'm spending too much time with my kids, because when I was seeing text, I thought of the text messages. Text books.
I do too.
Linda, I've got a question on the warrants, and I'm not sure which packet we're on because I just joined in, but I see Halverson Psychiatric quite a few times in the warrant. So what are they doing for us?
They provide services to a special education student.
I can say.
I don't want to say anything too specific because I don't want to say anything that is identifiable, but it is for services to a special education student.
Okay, and it's actually psychiatric care though. That's what surprised me. You know, special student, I thought it'd be a tuition or something like that.
I don't really want to comment on what the needs of a student are. I don't feel comfortable talking about that.
But it's a psychiatrist, right? Psychiatry.
That's what her title is.
Okay. All right. I guess I had like one kind of leftover question from last meeting. I found it kind of odd that we had FOIA requests that were being reviewed by legal. Do you have a list of the FOIA requests that are being reviewed by legal?
I do not.
Can you get that?
I could ask that question to Dr. Freeman and let him respond.
I think with I've seen some of the FOIA requests that are coming through. Sometimes they get sent to the whole board. Some of them are very specific about maybe a certain student or type of or category of students. And so, and some of them are just are very broad that it's hard to, and then some of the information they're requesting is very specific to students and identifying the students and giving out information. And so it's a very delicate thing with the FOIA requests, especially the way they're being asked and what they're asking for.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'm suspecting that Jonathan is asking this question because it relates to an expenditure, which is the purview of the Board of Finance, and probably is trying to noodle into some comments that may have been made by the superintendent of schools about the extraneous costs, legal costs that have been involved with many of these FOI requests. So Jonathan, is that the point you're trying to get to relative to how much is it costing? Because that's really that's the purview of the Board of Finance.
Yep. So
is that what you're trying to get to?
Yeah. And then of course I'm wondering why some of them.
Well, I'm sure Dr. Freeman would be able to identify, and probably Linda could identify, the legal costs associated with these FOI requests.
Right, but the key is to understand why are they going to legal. Like if we have the information, we should just
Jonathan, that's not your purview. That is the purview of the Board of Education to respond to FOI requests in a legally responsible manner.
However, we can know what those costs are.
That's exactly the point.
Well, what's driving off the cost is sending them to legal.
That's
And
not
I
our
don't
call,
think-
Jonathan.
Does it take a FOIA request to find out which FOIA requests are in?
I think you can call Dr. Freeman.
Jonathan, let's not mince words. This is political shenanigans.
I'm not mincing words.
This is political shenanigans. Why don't you stick to the purview of
I
the
wonder
Board
which
of
FOIA
Finance?
requests are going to legal and which ones aren't.
Oh, you
And
could
and
ask that question.
It's asked and answered. That's it.
It's not answered. I want to get a list of the ones that were sent to legal
Why?
to find out why are they being sent to legal. If we have the information, we give it out. The school should operate transparently.
Jonathan, let me suggest to you something, Jonathan. Every FOI request that comes to the town of Guilford on the town side goes to legal. I believe that is the same process that is affected at the Board of Education to ensure that we are complying with the FOI requirements.
Because there are privacy issues that cannot be released. And the legal has
All right,
to
well
decide
then
what
when
can
we
or
see
can't
the request, we'll understand why.
Well, then Dr. Freeman will be asked of that.
Yes. I will bring him that question.
Okay. We're just noting, Jonathan, on where we are. We're at fiscal year 21-22.
Okay, thank you.
So that's where we are in the agenda. So we're just going over the financials for that and the warrants, and then we're going to move to 22-23. So before we do that, we need to accept them, put a motion forward for the expenses. So does anybody have anything else for 21-22 before we move on?
Congratulations on returning a surplus.
Thank you.
Yeah, whatever amount that is.
Yeah.
Always good.
$17,000. It was
Good.
close.
Good point.
Better than a
That's right. Always.
And considering the volatility of the last few years, kudos to everybody.
Agreed.
Thank you. It definitely was a team effort for everybody at the Board of Ed. I know Mary Jane will say the same thing for the town. It's a team effort to get through the year like this.
Yeah. Okay. If nothing else for the 21-22 fiscal year, I will entertain a motion to accept the report of expenditures attributable to fiscal year 21-22 for the Board of Education in July 2022 for the amount of $753,997.28.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
abstentions, recusals. Okay, excellent. Now we can move on to fiscal year 22-23. And Jennifer, you get the distinct honor at this point of the year to give another report. Sort of. Well, actually, not really, because it's just, well, there are financials.
Yes.
And then there's the warrant. So,
Yep.
Okay, take it away.
So the expenditures for the month of July 2022 have been $3,654,110.35. Expenditures and encumbrances through the end of July were 8.18% of the budget. We did receive revenue for pre-K tuition of $3,800. The capital expenditures, they are higher than last year. The variances are due to timing of purchases for technology lease and summer facilities projects. The warrant being submitted is for total payments is $1,894,582.79. Just some things of note, some salaries have already been paid in this budget. Those are the full year staff, extra school year teachers and paras. There was an issue with the contributions to pension and OPEB. No, those have been made. The contribution to pension and OPEB have been made, but workers' compensation line shows that zero has been paid, which is not true. It was included in the other insurance payment on the purchase services line, and this will change in August. The insurance payments were higher than in the past because the new insurance carrier instead of requiring 4 equal payments, requires a larger first payment and then 3 equal reduced payments. The capital and site improvements are already heading over budget. There have been a lot of big unexpected payments. I think you're probably well aware of the Baldwin unexpected asbestos abatement, and the sprinkler system at 595 has been higher than expected. And I think the rest of it has to do with the warrant, so I can open it up to questions.
Helps if I come off mute. There we go. Questions regarding fiscal year 22-23.
I've noted that in reading the minutes, the technology, there's less and less availability from banks willing to do technology leases. I'm wondering if there's been discussion among the board, you know, either working with the town or another way to spread out payments for technology.
I think this is the one we just readjusted, right, Linda? Or no, that was, okay.
Yeah, so the capital lease actually had been approved to go through JP Morgan, and we had been dealing with 2 different banks. And this year, TD Equipment Finance said that they weren't going to do our small dollar amount leases anymore. So our only choice was JP Morgan that I was aware of. When we went to do the lease, we actually had an issue with the escrow bank wanting a lot of my personal information, and I didn't feel comfortable putting my personal information on a $575,000 lease. So with the advice of our attorney from Shipman and Goodwin, decided that we weren't going to go ahead with the JP Morgan lease, and we ended up doing one with Cogent Bank, which I had never heard of, but our attorney had worked with them before doing another municipal lease that was very similar. So we did this lease with Cogent Bank. The Board of Education re-awarded the lease to them at their meeting last week. We have talked about looking at what our options are for next year. Whether there is anything that the town would be looking to do on a lease where we could do a larger dollar amount, or you know, going back out to bid and seeing if there are others out there that we're not aware of that are doing these kind of leases. Because we at one point had 4 companies, and now we were down to 1. And thankfully we found Cogent Bank, and we were able to do the lease with them, and they actually gave us a better rate than what JP Morgan had. So it went down to 2.99%. So it's going to save us about $800 over what the JP Morgan lease would have cost us, which actually ended up working for our favor as well.
Yeah.
It's probably a much longer answer than you need for.
No, I just, you know, becoming a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to have to talk about it, especially as we go into the budget process, to see what our options are and how we can move forward.
Yeah.
Are we unique in terms of taking this approach with technology, or is that what others neighboring or comparable districts are doing?
There are other districts that are doing the same thing. When I had talked to Matt Ritter, he had actually just done a lease with one of the regional school districts, and that's how he had used Cogent Bank. So there are other school districts that are doing it this way. There are some people that are doing a more typical lease where you don't own the equipment and you give it back after 5 years. We don't want to do that. We want to keep the equipment, especially now that we've added the vehicles into it as the capital lease. We certainly keep the vehicles for more than 5 years.
Right.
If you don't mind, Linda, can you characterize, I'm curious, why would a bank back away from a leasing arrangement with a AAA rated municipal school system?
So we were dealing with just the escrow bank, and they kept coming back saying that it was all part of a know your customer regulation for money laundering, that they were concerned that they had to have all this information from the person that was signing off on the loan. And we tried to explain that I was only one of several people who were going to be signing it, that it was for the government. And JP Morgan wasn't in on the discussion at the time. When JP Morgan heard that we wanted to back out, they offered to do another bank and do the escrow with using another bank. But we had already talked to Cogent Bank and they had already given us a better rate. So we decided for this year it was definitely in the best interest to go with the other loan. We could still, JP Morgan still wants to do it. And they said that they will use a different bank other than Deutsche Bank was the one that had the issue.
Okay, so it's not a financial decision in a business sense. It's a disclosure issue,
right?
Regulatory issue.
Right.
Okay. All right. I know you mentioned that before, but I didn't realize that was the whole reason that they were backing away. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I had a question on the operation minutes. Actually, I think it's more just a lead in. There was a number 6, health insurance reports. There was the comment, Linda, that you had made that received a revised projected renewal rate, which will provide a 380,000 savings. Employee contribution will be based on the lower rate. Am I assuming correctly this is something we'll be discussing near the end of our meeting about?
Yes.
Insurance, right?
Yes, that's the same thing.
There's a precursor to what we're going to
Yes.
hear later on tonight. Okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought. Anything else on financials, warrants, either of the minutes? I mean, it is the first month of the fiscal year, so kind of hard to be questioning a lot of things when it's early on and all the numbers pretty much seem to be right in line with the last few years. So
yeah, except for site improvement, but
except for that, yeah,
that's always the unknown.
Yep.
I had one question on the warrants on page 3, and I think I've asked this before, but I forget, so forgive me. Newsella, that's like a news resource throughout the district? Yes. It was for this year's subscription.
Yes, that's it took the place of several other ones that we had been using. So it is a subscription services, and it's used across. I'm not sure if it's just the elementary schools. I know it's used across at least the elementary schools, if not up into Baldwin as well.
When you said that it's being used in lieu of a number of others that were used, was that a cost savings?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's exactly how much it saved, but it provided a lot more resources and a lot more current resources than what some of the others were.
Well, even if it provides more value and efficiency, as opposed to dealing with multiple vendors of that same sort of service, then it still makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll go ahead to the entertainment of a motion to accept the report of expenditures attributable to fiscal year 22-23 for the Board of Ed in July 2022 for the amount of $3,654,110.35.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? Okay. Jennifer, you did a fine job.
Well, thank you. I look forward to doing it again.
Okay. We'll see you next month.
Have a great night, everybody.
You too. Thanks, Jennifer.
Bye,
Bye.
Jen.
Everybody, thanks, Jennifer.
Item number 5, review and approve a report of expenditures for town government. 4, same thing. We've got 2 fiscal years to approve. So we'll start with fiscal year 21-22. Mary Jane.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I will be presenting full reports for fiscal year ending June 30, 22. And we have the warrants for July 22. And I'll be giving a more thorough report of July and August at your next meeting. Since we have so many other things to do this evening related to fiscal 22. Just to keep in mind that all of these reports are unaudited, things could change as we move forward. I'm going to start with revenues. So as the end of June 30, 2022, we were 102.1% collected for the fiscal year with a 2.165 surplus. We've been talking about this surplus as we've gone along. When you look at the report, all but three very small departments brought in more revenue than they did we had in our budget. If you remember through our budgeting process for fiscal 2023, we have adjusted some of the budgets for that fiscal year for items that we felt would continue on to that. But kind of talked about all of these line items over the last few months. I'll entertain any questions.
No, not on my end. It was, listen, it was a good year. We were fortunate.
Just a little curious though, Mike, you know, we collected more tax revenue than expected. What kind of drove that?
A couple things drives that. We brought in quite a bit of prior year tax revenue, more than we had anticipated. And we also had a high amount of a supplemental motor vehicle taxes as well. So, it's really just a matter of how we budget. We do reduce the amount that we anticipate to collect based on a lot of things that we discussed during budget season, suits that are out there for potential reductions in the grand list, as well as other items that we feel are coming through. Sometimes if those things don't happen, we end up bringing in more revenue than budgeted.
Okay, was it mostly people catching up on taxes owed from last year that were kind
of late? That was a large portion of it. That and motor vehicle supplements, I think, were the two heavy hitters for that line item.
Okay. $1 million
department too.
We're just talking tax revenue at this point.
You can go ahead and take that.
Anything further on revenue? Otherwise, we'll move on to expenses.
So on the expense side, I am showing the report in two different ways. And when we go through all of the transfers, we'll be talking specifically about the different line items. But the first report that reads as of June 30, 2022, unaudited, has an overage bottom line of $115,987. That is where our financial software stands today, in anticipation of some of the transfers that we are presenting for you this evening. So I'm not sure if you have any specific questions now, or if we want to talk about them in more detail as we go through.
My only question was on the encumbrances. It looks like they've been cleaned out quite a bit. Are those encumbrances pretty much going to hold at this point?
Well, we do have some. The encumbrances that are here are still there. We spent all last week talking with every single department and going over every single purchase order that we have. These are the ones that we have left on the books because they actually have orders out against them. So we have left them here. If the items, if we do not bring the items in, or if the items come in higher or lower, the year-end amounts will be adjusted, but we are down to just the ones we really feel are warranted to be kept at this moment, but we look at them every single day.
Right. No, I realize that it just went down a lot. So it looks like there was a big cleanup.
Correct. We tried to do that before this meeting.
Yep. Okay.
So I'll just note that the other report that I provided that says adjusted for pending transfers is how our financial report would look if all of the transfers that we present this evening are approved. So you'll see that that would bring a bottom line of, for the town, $61,647. It's the smallest surplus we've had since I've been here. I have said time and time again that this is the year that we are going to be flat, and we're almost there. Here you'll see the number that Linda quoted as her surplus, 17,658. We have that in our reports. The board and the town have already balanced their books together. So we have that amount in our books at the moment for a total of 79,304 surplus on the expenditure side. Again, that is on the assumption that the transfers we're discussing this evening are approved.
You know, and as challenging it's been the last couple of years, and you know, there's transfers, of course, that are going to take place. All, you know, there's always categories that are up or down. This was a pretty good budgeting that took place. I mean, to be, you know, pretty much. I mean, you're right. 79,000, you know, cuts it close, but it's, you know, there's not a lot left over. And that's a sign of some really good budgeting by the departments, regardless of some of the transferring that's gone on or will go on approvals, because that's just natural. But the overall numbers have come in pretty darn close. So Matt, it looked like you came off a mute and you wanted to say something. So
yeah, and Mary Jane could probably talk to this at this morning's Board of Selectmen meeting, which unfortunately I was not able to attend, but got a briefing on earlier. There's substantial discussion around the fire department's budget, and anybody takes a look at the numbers, there's a huge hole in their budget. We're talking $550,000 shortage, and there's Mary Jane can walk through some of the explanations on that, including somebody in the reserves, a number of workers' comp cases, and a number of vacancies and replacement salaries, and so forth. But we're looking at basically a 10% variance on their budget, and that's going to warrant a significant discussion between the Board of Selectmen and the management of the fire department and the fire commission. What is of particular concern to some of us is the fact that for fiscal year 20, well, the one we're currently in, 22-23, we have a budget allocation of about $5.4 million for the fire department. The number you see in front of you for fiscal year 22 is, you know, $5.75 million for the sake of rounding up. So if that pattern continues, we're already in the hole by nearly $350,000 for next year. So as Ricky Ricardo was fond of saying, Lucy, got some explaining to do, but we need to have some very serious conversations about where we are with that budget. Now, there have been extremely difficult pressures put on the fire department through COVID, and they have done an amazing amount of work. And I think the transfers that Mary Jane talked about probably reflect some of the COVID dollars that are there, but nonetheless, this is a pretty serious discussion that will need to take place. And as I think, Mary Jane, you indicated that the chiefs are going to be into the Board of Selectmen meeting, the first meeting in September, to talk about a much longer term look at this. What did I miss, MJ? Anything?
Yeah, I wanted to throw a couple questions at you. You know, we talked with Assistant Chief Shove last meeting, and we talked a little bit about the shortfall at the fire department. And I think we all agreed the lion's share was because of the replacement salaries. And he did go into it a little bit about how COVID did affect them. And, you know, every time someone was getting COVID, they were out for 10 days, right? I think was the guidance. So they were out for 10 days and we had to pay replacement costs for 10 days. Right. Do we know of, I think it was around $380,000 for replacement costs. Do we know how much of that was attributable to COVID? And can we maybe collect it from some of the COVID grant money?
Well, we have identified as much as we can for COVID for the fire department through their some of their lines in ways that we could specifically justify COVID related expenses. And we have already made those transfers either through FEMA for FEMA grants or through our current ARPA funding. So anything that we could specifically pinpoint and document has already been adjusted.
Okay, that's already in the soup. All right.
And quite honestly, I think there's another layer of conversations that need to take place between the management and the commission. And that is relative to, if we're going to continue to be in the same position with replacement salaries, do we start to look at hiring more full-time bodies? Okay. I know Bob is going to get to that question in a minute, because at some point it's less expensive to hire more bodies. Or is there an ability for us to manage the staffing ratios that exist there? You know, we often hear about the IAFF staffing levels, but you know, do we have to have 10 people on all the time? Can we do some combination of things between the North Guilford and the fire headquarters? So I think all of those conversations need to happen, because these kind of variances are significant and they warrant those levels of discussion.
I just want to applaud that, because I've been asking that question, and I'm glad you'll consider both sides of the sword. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. To take that to just one more comment, to, you know, the fact that there's an overall realization of it, and they're open and transparent about it, and they realize it, and they're willing to come to September and say, you know, let's try to make some corrections. Let's do what we can. The fact that they even came, you know, the assistant chief and chief came to our meeting last month and did a lot of that explaining that you said, really is a sign, you know, of the department and what they're realizing, what they're trying to do. So, you know, yes, it seems like there's some unique situations, right, that have certainly taken place that have hit that department more so than ever before, and other departments. But as long as they're willing to work it out and not say, hey, you know, that's what it is. It is what it is. There's nothing we can do about it. They're willing to do something about it. So I think on behalf of the board, we all appreciate that, and the town. So
good. Thank you.
But thank you for the you know, the update that they're going to do that. Mary Jane, by the way, this was very helpful to do the pending transfers to see how everything evens out. So I'm pretty sure you know, this is done every year at this time, that we get two reports, one showing pending and one showing what it is actual, but it's always good to see both versions. So anything else on the expense reports? Obviously, I was going to say the unaudited reports, just to make sure that's clear, the unaudited reports. Go ahead, Veronica.
Just going back to the fire department, I think it also is important that at least the minutes reflect that they do bring in revenue, and they were over on their revenue line. So while they had, you know, a substantial expense this year, they do bring in, they're over by almost $200,000 in revenue collections. Mm-hmm. I just want to point that out.
There is a bit of an offset.
Accentuate the positive.
Yeah, but all right. So I've got to throw in 2 cents on that, though. It's you know, it's $1,400 to get taken 3 miles from your home to Goose Lane, and yeah. I'm worried that people are making decisions between paying that kind of money, which is standard fare, I guess. You know, should we be looking at the rates charged and why, and to whom, and under what circumstances? I'm concerned that people are making life-changing decisions based on economics. It's just wildly expensive stuff. So maybe that can be brought into the, I wouldn't mind them making less revenue if they pulled in, if they compensated on the budgeting for expenses on the other side too.
Yeah.
Bob, that's a good point. We'll include that as part of the examination of how we're handling things. A good portion of that, the revenue that comes in, is through private payers, however. And you know, private payers, you know that insurance market. And quite honestly, I'm more familiar with that that particular thing, or 2.5 weeks ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Arrived at the age of 66 and taking my first ambulance ride, albeit it was a Madison ambulance company that took me out of Hammonasset. And when I saw the freight for that, I was like, oh my God. So clearly we'll take a look at that as well.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Shall we move on to warrants? 815 weekly special fund. And we actually have the capital fund reports as well. I always look at the capital reports and I look at the numbers and say, well, as long as there's less of them, as long as they're cleaned up and at some point closed out, because there's a lot of numbers on those reports, but I know they recently just got a good scrubbing. So
I'll be coming back shortly with some more.
I know you will. That's why we want to get rid of as many existing as we can, which we always try to do. Anything else for 21, 22 warrants or capital fund? Before I read the motion, I want to make sure that I did see two different numbers on the report, the overall summary. So it's the 1,440,000, right, that we're approving?
Yes. Yes.
That's what I thought, because it says net to be approved, but there was a different number, and I just want to make sure the net approved number was the one. Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the report of expenditures attributable to fiscal year 21-22 for the town for July 2022 in the amount of $1,440,942.
So moved.
I'll just note that's actually for June. That's not July, it's June.
Oh, typo on my end. Thank you. June 22 amended. So amended.
Moved.
Okay. Do we hear a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions, recusals. Okay. Item number 2 under town government, that would be fiscal year 22-23. On this, you had noted that we are approving warrants only. So we do have an expense summary, and then we have warrants, and that amount for the warrants and the amount that we're approving is the 5,275,000 number, correct?
Yes.
So does anybody have anything on the expense summary, any of the warrants? And we'll treat medical separately. Again, as I said with the Board of Education, it's early in the year. It's the first month, so kind of take a look at it, and everything looks according to plan, at least for the first month.
Yeah, well, in the 1st of August, we pay all of our debt almost. So we got a large amount
Right.
going out 1st of August.
Right. Yep, exactly. On medical, Mary Jane, anything you wanted to bring up specifically? It did seem like we had a lower claim amount in July. At least it got reported this year. Last year we had nothing in July, and then it caught up in August. But
Right. So
we have
last year they implemented a new software program. So that's why we didn't have the information. Again, usually in July, it takes us a little bit to catch up with it, because they're just like us. They're trying to finalize their June 30, and sometimes that first month of July doesn't always get processed right away. So my guess would be that next month we might see a little bit more from there as well. But
right.
so far, very, very little to report.
Right. And it'll offset that surplus that we saw in that first month. The trend, I should say, the trending surplus. Okay. Anything at all for fiscal year 22-23 before we move on and go to the motion? Okay, so to hear a motion to approve the warrant reports attributable to fiscal year 22-23 for the town for July 2022 for the amount of $5,275,436.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? Okay. Now we get to the fun stuff. Item number 3. Mary Jane, you ready?
I am. So I can go into as much detail as you want.
I heard
it was
you
a
had
very
practice at the
long
Board of
meeting
Selectmen this morning.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sure.
We went into a lot of detail, so I can do the same here or not, but I'll just start. The first items we have are the fund balance transfers. The top of the sheet are departments that are over and that we are moving items from fund balance into the departments, and the bottom half is surplus items that we're moving from the general fund to the fund balance. So the top part, I'd like to start with the top part. First of all, I'd like to note that these are all items that have been discussed throughout the year, all approved and discussed by the Board of Selectmen and with the Board of Finance through our meetings. These are funds that we have set aside specifically for these purposes. And we are now looking to make those transfers to make the line items whole in the general fund. So we start on the operating side with information systems. We're moving $63,000 into that line item from the committed fund balance for technology. I have a note of a few of the large dollar items. We updated our website, started that. We added the budgeting cycle to ClearGov. We are working with the Board of Education to implement employee self-service. We had to implement Duo two-factor authentication as part of our cybersecurity work that we're doing. And we also contracted with Zen City to do a poll through the Board of Selectmen. So those are the larger items that we have done for that amount. The next item is town properties. We knew that we were going to have an overage this year. The Mulberry Point water hydrants went in, but we had a very large surplus in fiscal 2021 because there was the merge of companies. And at that point, we chose to set aside that surplus into the facilities projects line item of the fund balance to offset the overage we would have this year. So here we are moving $121,000 from facility projects into fire hydrants for that purpose. The next two items are related to employee salary payments, payroll. The first is retirement sick leave. We do budget through their budgeting process for both of these items, retirement sick leave and reserve for personnel. But when we do that, we look to see how much money we have set aside in fund balance so that we don't need to tax the taxpayers for any more than we really need. So after we did all of our contract negotiations and after we had a few retirements, we have spent what was in the general operating budget, and we are moving $40,300 into retirement sick leave and $79,400 into reserve for personnel on the operating side, coming from those same fund balance commitments. The capital items, throughout the year, we did approve some capital items that we knew would be paid for from fund balance. The first is the completion of work on Clabbard Road. It's an engineering project for $85,000 that is coming out of road projects. The next is information systems once again. We have a very large project that we have been talking about over at Town Hall South, implementing the brand new EnerGov permitting software. That's a very large dollar amount project. It includes not only the EnerGov software, but some GIS work that we needed to do. And it also includes scanning, the continuation of scanning documents in at Town Hall South, so that when residents and contractors come into the counter, all of those documents are available to them on the terminal that we have. We have 2 terminals there at Town Hall South. So that is the bulk of the amount here for information systems. It also includes the continuation or the completion of the Zoom room that we would have been in tonight if there was air conditioning over at the community center. We purchased a police server with this money that they needed for, I believe it was their body cams, but not 100% sure on that, but I knew we needed a server for them. We implemented additional video systems at Town Hall. We have a contract that the town and the Board of Ed share with Munis. It's called the PACE program. It's a contract that we have that provides discounted training for both sides. So that's something that Linda brought to us, and we share in that, and it's come out of that line item. And then also the capital parts of the employee self-service. So that is $190,000 coming from committed fund balance technology into the capital. The last item is debt. We do estimate what the interest payment is going to be the first year that we have it coming in. So for the August 1, 21 bond, we estimated an amount of interest payment that we would have to make last year, and we just underestimated by $12,723, and that comes out of the future bond payment committed fund balance. So these transfers total $592,964. Questions on those?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just
go ahead. I was trying to get off of mute. Go ahead.
I'd like to just make a couple of quick comments. I want to do a shout out to Tracy. For those of you who have not taken a look at the updated Town of Guilford website, I think you ought to do yourself a favor and take a look at it. Clearly, it is light years ahead of where we were. And Tracy, along with Tony Santangargelo, but Tracy was a primary driver on the rebuild of that website, and she did an absolutely phenomenal job. The other item I just want to point out on retirement sick leave, that is a diminishing liability over time because of contracts that have been implemented over the years that limit the amount of sick time people can take with them when they retire. So it's not going to go away all at once, but we are slowly diminishing that liability over time.
Thank you for those points.
May I just one quick question? Just out of curiosity, just an old warhorse bond guy. Aren't these the debt? Aren't these bonds fixed, coupon fixed rate? Wouldn't they be a known amount of interest to pay every quarter?
No, because
semester?
I'm budgeting for a bond that I haven't sold yet.
There we are. That's the answer. Thank you.
Good.
Okay. Before we go on to the department surplus transfers, any questions on these? Mary Jane, I think you hit it pretty much, that these are all numbers and things that we've talked about through the year. And I don't have anything to add or subtract for that matter.
All right.
Okay, and the motion that we're going to be putting forward is going to include both halves of this sheet. So the department surplus transfers will also be part of this. So Mary Jane, if you wanted to go through that as well.
Okay, so on the other side, I'd just like to remind the board that we have changed the way that we do this at the end of the year. Historically, the town of Guilford has issued purchase orders at the end of the year to carry over funds for the next year, and we have changed that practice. We only allow purchase orders that have an absolute purchase applied to it. So if the purchase order is there, we have equipment or supplies coming in. It's not just, I want to hold money over for next year and I may not use it till next June. We no longer do that practice. So in lieu of that, we use our carried in force line on the fund balance side. We have specific items on this list that because of timing, because of supply chain issues, because of changes in department heads, some of these items were unable to be done in this current year, and the department heads are requesting that they be allowed to carry those over into carried in force so that they can use that money during the next year. On the capital side, Park and Rec, I think it was noted today, they have their elevator and project that they didn't get done. This represents part of that, $55,000. We had additional money to complete the town hall carpeting project. Because of issues that we have at the building, we have yet to been able to get that project underway. So this money will join the money we already have in carried in force, but it would be enough to complete the project. Park and Rec field maintenance is some work at the Baldwin Fields, and Public Works vehicles and equipment. It's one vehicle and one piece of equipment that because of supply chain issues, we have not been able to get them. So that's the capital amounts that we're looking to transfer. On the legal side, Attorney Barrett has requested that we move the $21,000 that he has left in his assessment and revaluation line. We do anticipate significant increase or need in that area because of the reval that is going in. We had thought that that would start maybe in the 22 year, but it didn't. We didn't have that need, but because we do still have that anticipation of a large amount of claims, he is requesting that we keep that in that line item. You'll see line striping in engineering and public works. They had a purchase order that we closed because the work could not get completed within the next couple of months, but it is line striping that it does need to be done for some road projects that were unable to get done. Therefore, the line striping was unable to get done. Under public works, there's $50,000 in summer road maintenance for work that was not done last year. Winter road maintenance has $49,000. It's primarily, it's all left in the salt line. We did not purchase a large bulk salt at the end of the fiscal year. Our new public works director is contemplating doing a new way of cleaning our roads, which would include more salt. So he has specifically requested, if nothing else, he wants that salt money. Equipment repair and maintenance, we have tires, lubricants, and parts that because of rising costs and supply chain issues, our prior public works director chose not to purchase them last year, but the need is there and the request is to carry that forward. And there's the line striping as well. So these requests total $397,672.
Okay. Any questions regarding those transfers? They all make sense to me. So
Pretty straightforward.
Yep. Okay. What I will do is read the motion that I crafted based largely on the memo that was part of this also that the Board of Selectmen used for their transfers. So with that, I am going to entertain a motion to transfer $592,964 from committed and assigned fund balances to various department accounts, and to transfer $397,672 in department surpluses to assigned fund balance carried in force as outlined by the finance director. and approved by the Board of Selectmen at their August 15th, 2022 meeting. So do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And any further discussion? And all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Next up will be the operating transfers. Mary Jane?
So these represent the true overages in these departments.
These are what were reflected in that pending transfers revised document.
Correct. So all the transfers you just approved were items to and from fund balance. They were specifically used in that fashion. These are the true overages, like I said, in the department where the departments went over, and there were not other funds available specifically for these purposes. All of them, I believe we've already spoken about. Natural resources, their tree maintenance line over by $9,000. The Guilford Lakes Golf Course, we did speak about that as well. They had significant tree damage and some specific maintenance that needed to be done. I'll also, as Veronica said, for the fire department, the golf course brought in more revenue than they were budgeted as well. So they covered their overage here. Fire department, I'm not sure there's anything more I can say that hasn't already been said. Communications, their telephone line and communications went way over. We've specifically expanded the use of VOCI to include every department and almost every employee, it seems like, and that caused a huge shift. And not only that, just telephone costs in general. We've added additional phones, specifically through COVID, that we have kept on. And the police normally do not have an overage in their account. This is the first time since I've been here, I believe they do. But supplies and their replacements have gone up as well, and they have an overage bottom line of only $5,600. So that totals $658,150. You'll see on the other side of the page all of the departments that have surpluses that we are taking the money from, including the selectmen, insurance, legal, engineering, building, tax collector, planning and zoning, economic development, the library, public works, town properties, park and recreation, employee benefits, capital, and operating transfers. Again, totaling $658,150.
I will have to admit, when I saw the police line and I saw that, I didn't initially see the 0.00 at the end. And I was like, wait a minute, 560?
Oh, you're right. That one has
5,600 was the only one that had 0.00 after it. And when I first looked at it, I was like, wait, where did that 560 come from? It was 5,600. So
a formatting snafu.
Okay, fantastic. Any questions regarding the department transfers in the operating budget? Pretty self-explanatory. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve $658,150 in operating transfers from the various surplus accounts to cover overages and other accounts as outlined by the finance director and approved by the Board of Selectmen at their August 15th, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Great. Okay. We will move on to, I know there was the Board of Selectmen memo with the transfers. We'll move on to item 4, and that was the consider and take possible action to close out FEMA projects and transfer funds. And I think you had indicated to us that we would be getting this memorandum last month, actually a couple months ago, and then last month you said you have it in front of us. So what I'm seeing here, and I'll let you explain, you know, we're talking about $94,796.06, which we were not reimbursed for the amount that we had requested, but were expended on 5 different FEMA events, as I see it here. Mary Jane, anything else you wanted to add?
I just want to specifically say that when I got to this position, this number was over $380,000 total. And I would like to give a shout out to my staff and myself, who have worked diligently over the last few years trying to get every dollar in. And we finally got to the point where I told Matt we just we had explored every possibility that we could. We're talking going back to Irene and Sandy, you know, back in 2012 and 2013. So it represents, you know, funds that the town had anticipated receiving funding back from FEMA. Some of it is even funds that the town had estimated that they would spend, but we didn't. So it's not all expenses that the difference is relative to a lot of things. And the last item is the winter storm of fiscal year 21. All of, in order to receive money from FEMA, they always have a threshold that your county has to meet in order for them to, you know, provide disaster funds. So the winter storm of 2021, our county just did not qualify. We only had $4,700 of damage. I know Branford was really hit and their number was really high, but as a whole, we didn't have enough. So FEMA did not reimburse us anything for that. So that's why I have that says not funded. It's because FEMA in the end did not, even though we put in all the application and paperwork, we were not approved for funding at all. So I'm actually pleased to see that it's down $94,000. We have set aside money. I had asked a couple of years ago to set aside money for this specific purpose because we knew we were cleaning these out. In the same way, I'm looking to clean out the capital items. I'm looking to clean this out. This is a accounts receivable on our books. And for me, an accounts receivable is something I think I'm going to get in. I don't expect any of this money. So we need to get it off of our books at this time.
I want to just put something out there, and Mary Jane, I'm glad you gave kudos to yourself and the department.
Why not?
Yeah, every once in a while, it's good to give yourself a pat on the back, right? And we agree. But I did a back of my head. I was going to say back of the napkin, but I didn't even do that. The expended amounts look to be, I don't have an exact number, but it was somewhere, just to give gravity to this, 1.3 to $1.4 million was expended. And we got back all but $94,000. That's pretty good. I mean, you know, you hear $94,000 and you're not sure what, you know, we're talking about expenses that were in the, you know, getting close to 1.4 million or over 1.3. I know that. So that was a great job by everybody putting the paperwork in and reporting it as carefully as you know everyone needed to for those 5 different events. So
yeah, and I appreciate you mentioning that, Mike, because that's exactly why I put all these numbers. You know, instead of just saying I need $8,000 for Irene, I wanted to show you know what the activity was for each of the things. So thank you for bringing that up.
I do have a question. And I just want to say, Mary Jane, you probably deserve like a coffee or a glass of water or something after going through all that stuff.
Glass of wine.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to ask you how this progresses down the line. So there's they're going to go to general fund accounts receivable, and then eventually do they sort of get written off?
Well, we have funds set aside in fund balance specific for disaster relief. So the receivable will be written off there.
Okay, so does that really happen like next year or something? Like they sort of sit on the books for another cycle or so?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. That'll be done in this year. I don't have it for last year.
Okay, so this next year's budget will feel a little hit for $94,000, but it's an account that's dedicated to this kind of expense.
Yeah, there won't be any hit to our budget. It's in the fund balance. In the same way we just transferred money from like technology fund balance, we have another line item for disaster relief. And again,
okay.
I had requested 350,000 in that line because that's kind of where I thought the number was going to end. But you know, now we have COVID. We have, again, hundreds of thousands of dollars going in and out for COVID. I expect when all is said and done, we're not getting every penny back.
Okay.
You know, because as you've heard me report for COVID, when COVID first started, we were told we were going to get reimbursed for everything. So everything went into FEMA COVID. And then when push came to shove, all of a sudden they started to back off. So,
Okay,
you know,
understood.
so at some
But
point, when
there's a matching pile of money to take on the liability. Okay.
Correct. But so at some point when COVID and all of the FEMA related COVID items are complete, I would be coming back to close it out in a similar fashion, because I anticipate there being a balance there as well.
Okay, thank you.
But it's 94, not 350.
Correct on these.
Right now.
Yeah. I mean, we literally had to recreate payrolls back from fiscal year 12, but my staff had the data, so we were able to do it.
Excellent.
They did a great job.
Okay, anything further regarding the FEMA projects? Otherwise, do I hear a motion to approve closeout of the various FEMA projects and transfer the funds from committed fund balance disaster relief to general fund accounts receivable as outlined by the finance director and approved by the Board of Selectmen at their August 15th, 2022 meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 6, discuss and take possible action to approve and authorize the finance director to sign the master services agreement and statement of work with CLA for the annual audit. This is just a protocol issue. We have an agreement with them that is a 5-year, right? 5-year, is a 5-year agreement or 3-year? 5-year.
Correct. So the first item is the master services agreement.
Right.
And that is exactly what it is. It outlines the services that they provide and the services that are available to us should we, want to have any more. It's something that we would need to sign every 5 years with them. And then we would use this document to add additional services if they're warranted or needed or requested. Right.
So this is just a renewal based on the current agreement.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on that? Therefore, I will entertain a motion to approve and authorize the finance director to sign the master services agreement and statement of work with CLA for the annual audit.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Great. Okay, item number 7, committee reports, building permits.
Time.
I
have two documents. I have 2 documents, statement of work.
Hold on.
You just approved the master services agreement and I have a second document.
No, I thought he approved them both.
I put them in.
You did them both. Okay, I didn't talk about the other one, but you've heard me talk long enough, so that's good.
Yeah, no, I said master services agreement and statement of work.
I'm sorry.
Wow. Well, usually I do mess something up, but okay,
I
got it right today.
I had tunnel vision 2 items, that's all.
No problem. Okay, anything on committee reports? Okay. Item number 8, old business, proposal to budget a reduced amount to the medical fund. We alluded to this before with the Board of Education report. The medical fund sheet was reattached to this. This was just the same one we already saw, correct? There were no changes to it. So this is just for discussion purposes.
Oh, that's the wrong thing.
Medical fund budget reduction request 815.
The older one.
Yeah. Okay. So that was. So you don't have our memo.
No, but just to note, I mean, I don't know what the timing is on this, but it does say proposal to budget a reduced amount to the medical fund. So this is not a take action item. I don't think if it doesn't say take action, we can't take action. This is just a proposal for discussion.
Linda and I put together a memo based on your the request of last.
Okay.
Matt, you want to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, sorry to bring this up once again, but I think I mentioned this last month or the month before.
Yep.
But based on a decision that's been arrived at between the Board of Education and the town's finance offices, and the updated forecast from our insurance consultant relative to our expenditures. The intention is to reduce the the contributions on a monthly basis. And then therefore totaling an annual basis. But a couple of years ago, those of us who were a little long in the tooth recall that we had made an agreement between the three major boards in this community that reductions to the defined contributions as approved at budget time would not be made. There would be no adjustments made until such time as all three boards had an opportunity to talk about it. So that's why it's here. And unfortunately, the memo detailing exactly what the proposal is not included in the packet. So I'm sure this is something that can wait till next month.
Okay.
Yeah, I apologize for that. Obviously, some snafu on my end because I'm the one that sent it to Tracy. So I did that. But just to say, Linda and I, have a memo and we can to make the request. So we will bring it up next month, I guess.
Okay. I knew.
Roughly the reduction.
There was the final reduction was $525,809 lower than what was approved by the voters.
Okay, for the year, over the entire year.
And I believe we heard or read the Board of Education portion. Am I right? It's 340. Did I get? Yeah, that's what I read. We all read. So.
Yes.
Okay.
So Mr. Chairman, just a quick question.
NJ,
the document that you did provide under this agenda item, which is the medical benefits account projection, does that include July actuals?
Yes.
Okay, so it's significantly below the anticipated, correct?
Well, were you not on when we talked about the medical report?
I was. I was paying attention to something else.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So typically in July we have a lag for those expenses. So I anticipate more coming in August. You see, last year we didn't have any reported in July. So I expect to have additional July expenses come through during August.
Thank you.
So we will look forward to that memo.
Sorry, Linda.
Before I go to just let me ask a question regarding that. Again, going back to the way it was written, it said proposal to budget a reduced amount. I guess this is a little bit of more Robert's rules kind of thing, but it's just a proposal or a discussion. If we wanted to take action on that, I mean, would we need to say proposal, discussion and possible take action on this, or is this something we're just going to discuss? I just wanted to know exactly how the process is going to go once we get the memo and reduce it.
Mr. Chairman, this is obviously, I think, your call, but at the time that we made the gentleman's agreement between the three, gentlewoman's agreement between the three boards.
Yep, I remember.
It was that everyone would agree that this was the appropriate process. So I think it was intended at that time that if adjustments were to be made, that the Board of Finance would in fact approve those. There is a subsequent piece of information that needs to be accommodated here, and that is if the reality is such that those decreased contributions will not cover the actual cost during the fiscal year, that there may be required adjustments to that payment stream, that reduced payment stream. So I think you would most likely want to authorize both boards to make those reduced contributions.
Matt, I would just like to comment that Linda did include those comments in our memo.
That's what I figured. We've been through this a couple of times, so.
Yeah, I know that all three boards need to have a discussion and agree. It was just a process of, is it all three boards approve and authorize, or is it the Board of Selectmen on the Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen on each side, and we're just in agreement with it? I was just trying to figure out what the process would, how do we approve it, or do we just say, yeah, we agree, and then it's the two boards that make that adjustment?
I think we're looking. I think we're looking for you to approve the decisions that have already been made.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but I just wanted to confirm it. But we'll talk about it more next month. Okay. Number 9, new business.
Oh, actually, Mike, I had one other old business. This is not strictly Board of Finance.
It's okay. Go ahead.
At least not immediately. Any updates on the weight loss program that the town staff are going through? As long as we're talking about insurance and the benefits.
After last month, I wish I was on it.
I don't have anything new to add over and above the report we had last month, other than I know Mitch Goldblatt has said that he's received other comments, and I personally spoke to the police chief, who is finding it to be a very successful program within his department.
Good, great.
Thank you. Good question. Might be a good way to end a good positive note to end our meeting on.
Even though we don't like to discuss losses.
That's right.
Boom.
We got to get you on, Carson.
Anything under new business? Okay. Public forum. I think it's just us. Right now I'm seeing the Brady Bunch. I got 9 images, got the Brady Bunch. And right now I have Tracy in the middle.
So about 5 minutes ago, I was going to congratulate Megan and Declan, and they just stepped off. But
yeah, about 5 minutes ago.
Incredible.
There's some dedication right there.
There sure is.
Yeah, what a boy.
Yeah. Actually, that's a very good point. Under new business, hearty congratulations to Megan on behalf of the board and birth of her new son. Welcoming him to the family. Okay, public forum. We already did that. There's only one thing left to do.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good night, everyone.
Continue to have a good summer.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.